opposing groups, and with that in mind, you guys, that's your space, and that's your space. So I think you may have jumped the gun on that one, because I think that's a different set of concerns.
It is a different set of concerns, but it's also a more complex one to address. And I didn't feel that I could come with a reasonable proposal with on a short list. What I was trying to do was a stopgap measure that by the sort of the 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. provision and the grounds restriction on the paved surfaces, yes, no problem, no permit needed. On the grass, off limits for at least the interim period, at least until we have some rules and provisions.
You have clearly had a lot of experience doing these kinds of things, and I wonder if in this case, because you have that macro experience, you jumped into something without seeing the micro. And let me just mention what the micro was for me anyway, and I think for a lot of other folks. It felt like, from our standpoint, that the local Occupy group bent over backwards, and I think some city councilmen, maybe even yourself, agreed.
Oh, absolutely. And I thought that was why, because there was a very cooperative approach in the fall discussion.
So if I could finish,
the council was poised to say yes for the encroachment agreement for the area that the group turned down. Perfectly legitimate group voted to turn that down.
The one by the daycare.
One on Marshall. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So from a micro standpoint, and I wonder if you would have experienced this the same way. I got a feeling you would have. It felt like through those 3 or 4 months of really trying to work closely with the city council, and particularly in that one 24-hour people's forum, that we were being nibbled to death by like guppies. It was sort of this consistent, persistent yip yap, where any one of those is not a big deal, but over the course of a long haul, it's just kind of chipping away. Can't do that, can't do this, move over there, now you have to leave, now we're going to arrest you. No, wait, I'm sorry, we can't arrest you. We read the city ordinance wrong. It was this constant little piece. So if you can imagine, you're trying to do that, trying to do it all the right way. At the same time, you got a representative of ours right up here in City Hall chipping away more, saying, oh, wait, you know what? I'm trying to pass right now. You can't even be on that grass right there. It's that constant pressure and that chipping away, that slow erosion, if you will, of free speech that I think is the greatest concern. Your intervention of yourself, any of the others by themselves, maybe not that big of an issue, but it begins to erode things away. And I think, from my perspective, even what led to that arrest had to do with that constant, middle of the night, a little bit too strong a word, but those raids that were happening, these sort of harassment and sassing of a group of very, very peaceful protesters having a public forum, that led to a young guy finally pushing a brink, yelling something stupid over his shoulder, walking away and being tackled, and that's on tape. That made it all the way to the West Coast, I think. So what I encourage you to do, and ask that you do, if you haven't already, is really look at this from the inside, and not just from the outside, because you probably do have a lot of wisdom, a lot of history about what works, what doesn't work. But from the inside, it's this nipping away. And I'm afraid that your proposal, if you decide to go through with it, your proposal is more that nipping away. And that's a slippery slope, and one that I think if you run inside, you would be very hesitant to cross.
Well, I hear you on that.
Right, check.
What did it say?
I think you're trying to get the folks out to the sidewalk to be public.
General Assembly forum with facilitators and stack and minutes and everything like that, so we can be accountable to what's being said, perhaps.
We could. I feel like I'm going to probably be finished here. Doesn't mean there's not more dialogue.
Absolutely.
But yeah, we'll be back on Monday. But yeah, I hear your point on that, and I hear the perspective. That's a very reasonable one. From the other side, it looked like the city manager's office was trying to negotiate and was having a very difficult time getting clarity on who was authorized to negotiate and what the process was.
Negotiate? Do you mean when he came in at 11 p.m.?
No. I'm talking about the fall process and the effort to find an agreement or create an agreement.
Would you agree that 7 locations that were suggested were all refused?
Well, hang on a second. Let me finish that thought. The effort from the city manager's office, and this was, I have to give Lee credit that he was trying hard to come to an agreement on a space that both sides thought could work. And it was a frustrating experience, I know, from that perspective, which the council members were hearing, because he thought that there was an agreement that folks were, if not overjoyed with, at least reasonably satisfied with that would work. And then
you mean the site that was off?
Yeah. Now, and I understand that's
would you,
a different perspective.
Would you have set up camp there? Yes or no?
If I was looking for a place to make a public issue statement, yeah, that's a high visibility location. And as you see,
you would have brought that attention to the daycare.
My thought was that I didn't expect you to do anything that I thought would scare the kids, and I didn't think that you would propose.
No, we may have been just as be a little careful there, I think, because I think you're suggesting now that, well, you guys are going to do something wrong.
No.
Because there's two sides. There's also the police side, and the police, by and large, have been wonderful. And there's been a few mishaps from the police side, and I'm sure from the other side. But I'm surprised that you would bring right next to a daycare any potential just drama. The parents going in and out with their kids don't need to even see this. They're just kind of minding their own business.
I don't know. I thought this is a very democratic process, a very peaceful event, and I don't think it would scare folks. But let me just finish that one thought. The perception was that we'd reached a point at which it was difficult to know with whom we could negotiate and how we could effectively negotiate. And while the folks like myself on the council were perfectly willing and anticipating continued discussions about sites, my expectation when I come back from a weekend hiking, up in the Pisgah Forest and learn that without, I don't want to say in an offensive fashion, but kind of without warning, that folks had set up on the City Hall lawn, that we were in a situation where there was no one with which we could effectively negotiate on a real-time basis. And therefore the approach that would work, even if it wasn't going to make everybody happy, was a temporary clarification of what the rules were about City Hall grounds for now, with the plan to have that about 2.5 month period, 3 month period, during which we work out what would be the deal over the long term. But that's the perspective from the other side. Now I hear what happened from the perspective of the Occupy group, and that's I can understand how the internal dynamics and internal perception would be very different from perception on the other side.
Yeah, I think part of the challenge is at some point when you're trying to negotiate and you're trying to work with, in this case, city council and the city at large, and you feel, at least, that you're doing all the right steps. And although people are being cordial, it's kind of a unanimous no. It felt like door shut. It just wasn't going anywhere, to the point where we thought, okay, let's pull our request, and instead of looking for a 365 campsite, instead, let's just follow the law of a 24-hour people's forum. By the way, there's no maximum of 24 hours. We just decided, let's do that, and let's pick a place that's clearly public land. Let's pick a place that's not even in a residential neighborhood, so there's no concern about noise ordinance. It was almost impossible to bother anybody. It might be really hard for us to bother somebody, or even be seen as bothering somebody. So that's how that came to be. It was, boy, we've kept trying. It's not working. We're going to pull the request, and we'll just do this. But that little thing, that's where that nipping at the heels, until we felt like we were just getting eaten alive, like the dropped in piranhas. Take a little bite, you're down to your skeleton. That's what it felt like on this side. So that comes back to your proposal, and we don't have to just run it over again. That's the big concern. It's just another element thrown out there, when I would prefer that you say, thought it over. I still think maybe there's a good reasons for it, but it seems like this is really hitting people's nerve around freedom of speech. That's the last thing I want to do. I've never been for that. I'm not going to be for that now. Let's pull off of that, and let's get back focused on the issues. What is it the Occupy movement is trying to say? How are they trying to create awareness? And how can we help them do that in a legal manner?
Well, actually, I think my proposal will be helpful to do that in a legal manner. And I think that it will help us redirect the focus onto the basic message of the Occupy movement as a whole, as I understood it, why I was supportive of that message. The problems with the excess influence of money in politics, with the abuses in the financial industry, with the disparities in income and wealth and opportunity in the country. All those issues that I think that the movement grew to embody and to reflect. I'm concerned that too great a focus on tactics, especially the 24-hour event kind of tactics, have distracted from that initial message. And I want to see, just my personal preference, which of course is not controlling on anybody.
Sure.
But what I would love to see is the movement focus again on that message of dealing with the disparities in society, the disparities in opportunity and economic opportunity.
I definitely appreciate that. You clearly know what the Occupy movement is about. You certainly seem to support lots about that movement, and that's always nice to hear. And I give you my word that if you are able to let this go, what we feel is an infringement on freedom of speech, then we won't have a reason to meet and talk about freedom of speech. We're terribly frustrated that our message seems to have been derailed over to freedom of speech. We also want to get it back on track with the same things that you want. We're going about it different ways, but I still ask that you reconsider that. That'll help us get back on track, which is exactly what you're suggesting too.
Well, I respect that opinion.
All right,
and
thanks
we'll talk
very
about
much.
it more
Okay,
afternoon.
all right, thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
So you say you've been on marches before. Would you like to join us to Atlanta?
I wish I had the time to do that.